Okay. I'm sighing because tonight here, is a very important night. We are contemplating the meaning of suffering, which I think we haven't begun to explore enough, and this is what is making logotherapy unique. Frankl taught that suffering was not something we should try and run away from when it comes upon us, but that we are to accept it as a task. And what is that task? You know, this is what Frankl said they discovered in the camps, and this was the biggest attitudinal change possible, that it was not what they expected from life, but what life was expecting from them. And what was life expecting? What is life expecting when suffering overtakes us? It's a test, you know. It's a test that we are challenged to pass with flying colors, because what is the test? As Frankl said, suffering makes us aware of what ought not to be, okay? It's like we drop away and let go of things that should actually not be in our lives. And then it makes us keenly aware of what ought to be. And what is that ought to be? To rise to the great moral stature that we were created to become. Each one of us in our particular areas are being tested, yes, challenged. How strongly do you believe that life has meaning, and that your life has meaning, and that you have a purpose and a mission in life to accomplish? You become very aware, very keenly aware of what it is that really draws you, that appeals to you, where you feel you should be. And when you take your place there, and that is what Frankl said, even in the midst of suffering, you can rise to the heights that no other situation can possibly give you. Now that's logotherapy. Good heavens, what a different view of suffering that is. So, Aviva, when Batya sent me your recording of your final assignment in the advanced course, I was blown over. Blown over, why? Because here was a logotherapist great in the making. So over to you, and I can't wait to listen to you once again.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I feel like I'm at the Oscars. Thank you to Badge and Teria for this opportunity, and thank you all for joining. I'm a bit nervous, but I'll do my best. I have for you a story made of stories of birth, death, and rebirth, of suffering and strength. It is the story of logotherapy, the tree, and me. As all stories should, I'll start at the beginning. I was born in 1970. Out of 9 pregnancies, I was the only baby that survived. My mother was Swiss and my father was Czech. He was a Holocaust survivor who had most of his family murdered in Auschwitz. I was given the name Aviva to honor my father's sister who had perished in the camps, a name that has never really been mine, that I carry like a number on my arm, a constant reminder of the suffocating, permeating presence of the Holocaust. I felt the weight of responsibility to be good enough, to live a life worthy enough, to be the only child to survive and bear the important name that I was given. I never felt enough, not good enough, smart enough, pretty enough, or thin enough. I was shy, awkward, and a misfit, clumsy and sickly. After a major iatrogenic trauma at 13, I became unhappy, depressed, suicidal, rebellious. I self-harmed, was truant from school, ran away from home, mixed with the wrong crowd, and started my journey with addiction. I asked why. Why am I so wrong? Why can't I be good enough? How can I be so weak and pathetic that I have these problems when my father survived the camps? My father was in constant pain, and I could do nothing but watch him silently suffer. Despite his pain, he was the most active and kind person I've known, always busy with something and helping others. I didn't realize then how closely my life would mirror his, and how his refusal to be a victim of his pain and trauma, his determination to fight and never give up, would be my inspiration. Like other children of Holocaust survivors, I wanted to know more about my father and his family, to hear their story, yet I was afraid to ask, and afraid to know, as the asking would cause us both pain. Sometimes he would tell me stories, and while I reeled from the pain, I tried to hold on to those memories, his precious memories, because it was my responsibility to hold them safe and to remember. Holocaust Remembrance Day was the worst, as he would watch the programs on television from morning until night. One year I watched with him. When I couldn't bear it anymore, through my tears, I asked him why he put himself through this. I'll never forget his words. He told me that nothing that was shown came close to the horrors that were reality, and that he had to watch because he was looking for his family. Until recently, I didn't understand why I don't have many memories of my past. I know there was happiness and fun, but I don't remember experiencing them. Once my appetite for learning was awakened by my study of logotherapy, I began my journey to gain knowledge and discovered Gabor Bate and Bessel van der Kolk, who specialize in childhood trauma. And I realized that my neurologic, psychic, and somatic issues are caused by childhood trauma. There is no blame. None of it was my fault or my parents' fault. We did the best that we could. Thus, understanding finally brought peace. Logotherapy gives me the encouragement to face and understand my past, all the suffering that helped shape the person I am today, to accept with grace and not to use as a weapon to hurt myself or others, or an excuse for my failings. Would I choose this life of suffering? No. But I choose to find the meaning and gifts that it provides. I have mostly made peace with my past, found forgiveness and understanding for my inner child who did her best. And I found meaning in my suffering, the dangerous situations I put myself in, the bullying I experienced, the protective persona I developed that scared my tormentors and enabled me to protect others from them, the self-harm, depression, near suicide, unhealthy and abusive relationships, eating disorders, social issues, self-doubt and lack of self-belief, being over-emotional, the nightmares, whether awake or asleep, the noetic, psychic and somatic pain and injuries, suffering and death of loved ones, addictions and negative thinking, sexual assaults and rape. I believe that my suffering was punishment for something I did in this life or the past, and I needed to help others as my penance. Without knowing, I always wanted to know who I am. Where do I fit? Why do I exist? What does life want from me? I was in an existential vacuum, searching for neurological wholeness, meaning. I find meaning in suffering as I use my experiences to help my daughter, self, and others. By these events having meaning, my why has been answered, and instead of being a victim who has no choice, I am a warrior with strength gained by choice and responsibility. My addiction to opiates started when my left ankle was crushed. After lengthy emergency surgery and a long hospital stay, I was bedridden for 3 months, followed by 3 months until I was able to walk again. Just as I recovered, the metal pins, plate, and wire started to push themselves out, requiring further surgery. I had started to reduce the opiates when I received multiple dog bites while saving the life of my dog from attack by another dog. One of the bites caused an infection from fingertip to elbow, requiring emergency surgery and 8 days in hospital. Despite months of rehabilitation, I was left disabled, in constant pain, lucky to have not lost my hand, and had to increase the opiates. Once well enough, I had surgery to remove the metal from my left ankle, and when I recovered from surgery, broke my right ankle. By this point, I was in constant pain from both ankles, my hand, and fibromyalgia. My mother's dementia had worsened, and she was diagnosed with cancer. I needed to care for her, my son, my daughter who is on the spectrum, and cope with my worsened physical state. My opiate use got worse, and I was taking Valium, sleeping pills, and my alcohol consumption increased. After being diagnosed with liver damage, the doctor asked if I wanted to see my children grow up. I stopped drinking that same day. I grew up in a traditional Jewish home with belief in God until my teenage years, when one day I thought that there can't be a God with all the terrible things that happen in the world. And if there is, then I want no part of a God who would allow good people like my father, his family, and others to suffer so meaninglessly. And I lost my faith. It was many years later, at a time of terrible suffering, that I regained my faith in the divine or God or what I call something. For 18 months, my son was on a ventilator in the ICU, lungs destroyed from 3 bouts of pneumonia and 2 of COVID within 6 months. Despite no lung function, his body was able to absorb oxygen. Doctors said it's impossible. He had dangerously high fever, which wouldn't come down for weeks, 8 superbugs, 2 of them antibiotic resistant, yet he lived and beat 7 of the superbugs. He experienced organ failure and was given an hour to live, yet he fully recovered within 24 hours. His brain was starved of oxygen for hours, with the question being how much brain damage was caused, not if. Yet there was no brain damage. Faced with the unavoidable proof that there is something at work here, I regained my faith. And with acceptance of faith came meaning. After fighting with and for him for nearly 2 years, as his mother, therapist, nurse, and doctor, his life saved and impossible possible, we lost our fight. As I'd done many times before, this time I couldn't clear his breathing tube, and I watched helplessly as he suffocated to death. And his mother, my job was to keep him safe, and I failed. So began my descent into madness. For 3 months I despaired, tore at my skin until the blood ran, returned to alcohol after 2 years, drinking bottles of wine and spirits daily, together with huge amounts of Percocet, OxyContin, sleeping pills, Valium, fentanyl, and codeine in amounts that brought me to the brink of death. One day I felt shame, and a spark entered my grief-stricken mind, the tiny spark that was the will to meaning of self-transcendent love that gave me the strength to escape the black pit of despair towards life and the light that was my love for my daughter. A love so strong and complete, so meaningful, that it gave me strength and courage. I made the choice, accepted my responsibility for and to her. I had failed my son. I would not fail my daughter. I would not rob her of her mother. It was then my husband spoke about rehab. I agreed and went. As Frankl said, those who have a why to live can bear with almost anyhow. They couldn't believe I was still alive and was, in fact, days from death. It was a year-long program that I left after 6 weeks of agony. Once the drugs had left my system because my daughter and husband needed me. Once again, my ultimate meaning of love through self-transcendence enabled me to find the strength to do what I was told is impossible. Arriving home, I still had to fight my demons of grief, guilt, and addiction. I thought of alcohol constantly until one day, during the logotherapy course, I realized that I had gone weeks with only occasional thought of it. I began to recover until a pain in my hips that I'd been feeling for a while worsened to the point I couldn't walk. Tests had shown that I had developed avascular necrosis of both hips, meaning there's insufficient blood flow to the head of the femur, which results in bone death. And I'd been walking on a fractured hip for weeks. My specialist refused to operate as fibromyalgia and addiction issues made it too risky. I was repeatedly prescribed opiates despite being unable to take them. The somatic, psychic, and neurologic pain, plus facing a life without my son, caused another break. And I was diagnosed with PTSD. I retreated to my room, my prison, that through my practice of logotherapy became my sanctuary. I cut myself off from friends and family, places, a world that was too painful for me to live in without my son, as everyone, everything, every sound and scent taunted and reminded me that my boy wasn't here. My psychiatrist put me on medication and recommended an EMDR therapist, but none were prepared to take me due to my complex issues. I created my own world. As Frankl wrote, an abnormal reaction to an abnormal situation is normal behavior, and started healing myself using methods I would later learn had a name, logotherapy. I asked, why was my son born just to suffer with a hard life? He had Down syndrome, autism, learning difficulties, and various other issues. When he passed, he was a 3-year-old in a 20-year-old body. Why didn't I die when I wanted to? Why was he born? Such meaningless suffering. Then one day I thought that this way of thinking devalues his precious soul. And I started thinking of how his existence affected people and the world, the impact he had, and the gifts he gave. And I realized that he and his life had great meaning. I realized that his life, and therefore his self, couldn't have meaning if I was not prepared to accept that my life and self have meaning. Finally, I found a psychologist who hesitantly agreed to treat me. After a few sessions, she said my method of self-healing is logotherapy. I replied, "Logo what?" She told me about Viktor Frankl and man's search for meaning, to which I replied, "Hell no. I am struggling to retain what little sanity remains. I am not facing my Holocaust demon." A voice wouldn't leave me, whispering inside my mind that this is something important. I bought Man's Search for Meaning and read it in a few hours. Every page felt familiar. I felt connected to the part of myself that was missing, to my father, my past, my thoughts and beliefs. I was comforted, excited, and challenged. This led me to study logotherapy, which changed my life and gives so many gifts. I met wonderful people who enrich my solitary existence, understanding that the complexities of life, people, and self are so simple and clear. Knowledge that has given me the alphabet from which I can write my present and future, my story, that whatever happens, I have choice, and with that responsibility, strength, and power. It has given me the ability to see clearly that which was hidden. It helps me to focus on thoughts that are positive, instead of being consumed with fear, anxiety, dread, and worry. My soul is healing. I'm making peace with my past, present, and future. Instead of life's moments consisting of suffering to endure, my only comfort that my existence is necessary for my daughter's well-being, and that each passing moment brings me closer to death. When my suffering will end, I will be at peace and reunited with my son and loved ones. I told myself that I cannot be true to logotherapy if I reject one of its most important tenets, that life itself has meaning. How could my son's life have meaning if mine does not? How can I help others to see and believe if I could not? So I decided to believe that my life has meaning. I have meaning, and therefore worth. And if life has meaning, then so does every moment. I made the decision to savor and value each precious moment, as it will never come again, to make it worthy of being held as part of my past and a moment towards my future. Of course, there are days when I struggle with this, when my thoughts are dark, but I now know that with acceptance, patience, choice, responsibility, and faith, they will pass. I changed from having to help anyone and everyone, mostly to my detriment, because I felt I had to a person who helps others from choice, to use lessons learned from my suffering and logotherapy to aid them without damage to myself. Logotherapy has taught me names for things I practiced instinctively: Socratic dialogue, naive questioning, and crabbing. Methods I used to teach my daughter, who is on the spectrum, to understand emotion, societal rules, and to be the best person that she can be. I learned new meaning for words I knew. I had thought that self-transcendence meant rising away from the self to achieve peace. But Frankel's style means going towards another, to be an open system as opposed to being closed and self-serving, to love and accept others as perfectly imperfect humans. Again, I ask myself, how can I authentically practice love and acceptance of others, utilizing the I and thou dynamic, if I couldn't practice it towards myself, the inner child, the part of myself that yearned to be accepted, forgiven, and loved? I learned of paradoxical intention, but only understood it when I heard Elizabeth Lucas tell a client that you can't be anxious when you're laughing. It was then that I realized that it's a method I thought I had discovered for my insomnia, when I couldn't fall asleep and night after night trying in vain to sleep. I had tried everything until one day I said, okay, if you can't sleep, then don't. Stay up all night. Immediately, the stress dropped away. Sometimes I'd sleep, and sometimes I wouldn't. But the terrible stress and anxiety were gone. While studying paradoxical intention and tragic optimism, trying to connect to and fully understand them, I realized that I used a similar method that I call tragic humor, where I use humor to distance or detach myself from difficult, traumatic, embarrassing, humiliating, and most definitely humorless situations. And to my pride and shame, there is nothing I cannot find humor in to lighten or diffuse the situation or to shield me from harm. Tragic humor breaks barriers, as not many people can be angry, unfriendly, or resist the humanizing effect of the laughter that humor brings. I think the seeds of my use of tragic humor were sown by my father. He didn't talk much about his experience in the camps, but I remember when he told me how the Nazis would punish him by hanging him up for hours, legs bent behind his back and tied, hung by his wrists, and that this happened many times. I asked him why. What did he do? With a glint in his eyes and a wry smile, he said it was because he was insolent. Without words, he conveyed to me that they would never break him, and they never did. He was defiant until the end. Another example of tragic optimism and tragic humor is from another story my father told me from his time in the camps. It was a Sunday, and on Sundays, they weren't worked as hard as other days. It was freezing cold, and one of the Nazis' tanks had got stuck in the freezing mud. Of course, they didn't want to risk the horses, so they got the Jews to pull it out. Freezing, soaking wet, and covered with icy mud, my father complained to the small religious man who toiled next to him, only to be told, it could be worse. My father responded, how the hell could it be worse? His fellow prisoner replied, we could be naked. As my father told me this, his expression was strange. He was transported back to that day. His haunted eyes sparkled with humor, an expression of respect and humility for a man who, in what my father felt was the worst of situations, could find what I now know as tragic humor and tragic optimism. And he would say, he was right. When things were especially difficult, he would tell me this story, a story I recall when things are hard, and one I tell others to honor the memory of my father and his fellow prisoner, and to hope that they too will feel that it really could be worse. Because even when we feel that we have nothing, feel powerless, meaningless, and desperate, we always have choice. We can choose our attitude, will to meaning, and how we face life and death. When reading Frankel's metaphor of the best move in chess, I connected to it, but it didn't feel meaningful for me until I realized that my life is more like a boxing match. Here too, there are universal rules of engagement and moves that all can learn, strength and knowledge that can be gained and used, awareness of the strengths and weaknesses of oneself and one's opponent, flexibility and awareness to act and react according to the situation of each moment. Experience, flexibility, courage, determination, neurologic, psychic, and somatic strength, belief in oneself and a higher power, and acceptance give advantage. But most important of all is to be an open system, to have the ability to act accordingly to each unique and challenging moment, that we have will to meaning and find value in what we do, what we are, and what is. It is vital to accept that there will be unavoidable suffering and to do what one can to avoid or minimize avoidable suffering using skill, wisdom, and experience. When one gets knocked down, to rise and continue to fight. But when unable to rise, to make the choice to rest and heal, to regain strength for the next fight, and to learn from one's error or loss, thus turning a negative experience into a positive. I see life's journey like traveling on a train. Out of the left window is an ugly, barren view of negativity made of fear, guilt, regret, loss, pain, blame, hate, and sadness. On the right is optimism, a beautiful view of hope, peace, joy, strength, love, and purpose. Both views exist, but through logotherapy, I have learned that I have the responsibility to choose where I turn my gaze. When the difficult moments of fear, pain, confusion, and flashbacks are many, I accept them with the knowledge that these are moments to rest from the fight, and they will pass to better ones. Previously ruled by emotions, I've learned that they have meaning as logo hints to aid me to identify the cause, and therefore the deeper meaning which gives me the ability to question, understand, and accept. When consumed by fear or anxiety, I regard it as suffering. If avoidable, then I choose not to allow it residence. And when unavoidable, I face it, either to conquer or accept and learn from it. I've learned the term medical ministry. Such beautiful, gentle words for the comfort, strength, hope, love, and meaning that we can give ourselves and as logotherapists give others in the most trying times. And I wholeheartedly believe that when experiencing loss of any kind, grief, pain, illness, disability, or end of life, logotherapy is the best gift that we can give or receive. For many years, filled with pain, I couldn't accept that there wasn't a solution for my suffering. There had to be, yet I had tried everything and nothing worked. Opiates worked for a while, giving blessed relief, but very soon my body adjusted and they didn't have much effect. It was only after rehab that I discovered that the pain was the same with or without opiates. And I decided to accept that I will live in and with pain, sometimes bearable and sometimes not, but with hope that maybe one day it will be negligible or absent. I learned through logotherapy about choice, responsibility, and attitudinal value, and realized that I cannot change the fact I suffer, but I can choose my attitude. Unable to walk due to pain and damaged hips, I faced the fact that I can either use a wheelchair or a disability scooter. I struggled with this as I felt humiliated, and that acceptance meant giving in. With self-pity and bitterness, I recalled my dream that one day I would ride my motorbike, and instead I end up with an old person's disability scooter. But after thinking, again with logotherapy by my side, I told myself I have choice. I choose to get the disability scooter, and that its use is for now. And if I'm going to have it, then I will rock it. I gave it several names. The only one appropriate to use with others, that it's my Harley. I laugh at my embarrassment, my shouts of fear as I go into reverse instead of forward, my little crashes, the furniture on which I catch and drag across rooms, or the stairs when it would beep a warning as if it was a 10-ton truck when reversing. And I take great pleasure when I speed along going, whee! I developed anemia so severe I couldn't breathe and was hospitalized. It has damaged my teeth and gums, resulting in lengthy dental surgery and treatment. Other health problems have been found. Facing surgery for a double hip replacement due to damage caused by alcohol, I felt shame, blame, and guilt that I had to work hard to replace with forgiveness. Before my rebirth, I would have asked, why am I being needlessly punished? Today I ask why and look for meaning. And when I can't find any, I tell myself that sometimes shit happens, and the only thing I can do is choose my attitude. I have always had sleep issues, trouble falling and staying asleep, nightmares and night terrors. I always feared sleep. As a troubled teenager, I would go for so long without sleep that I would hallucinate. The years spent being by my mother's bedside and then my son's to care for them during the night, combined with the trauma of their passing, made sleep impossible. It is my job to guard my loved ones. And when I close my eyes, I experience flashbacks of their suffering. Only after days where I'll have minutes of sleep, my body shuts down and I sleep for a few nightmare-filled hours, only to wake in pain, panic, shame, and guilt that yet again I have failed those I loved. To the doctor's confusion, prescription medication had no effect, which again made me ask, what is wrong with me? It was again through logotherapy that I discovered the immense strength of the nurse, and that when distressed, it is more powerful than any pharmaceutical. I can heal myself with logotherapy and the knowledge I've gained via this method. My sleep has improved, but is never restful or refreshing. Sometimes the price of sleep is too dear, as all the suffering and trauma that I push away in order to cope resides in my unconscious, waiting for the opportunity to make itself known. Previously, I would fight not to sleep until once again, through my learning, I told myself that what's the worst that can happen? Sleep has nothing worse to offer than what I experience when awake, and if I cry, so what? Luckily, I have developed the ability to wake myself up. I calm myself and analyze the meaning in my dream, and through understanding comes acceptance and some measure of peace. Another important event in my journey with logotherapy was when I heard Pam talk about logotherapy and dream interpretation. It was a revelation, and after years of trying to understand my nightmares, all became clear to me. I see the conscious and unconscious as twins. The conscious is loud and articulate, while the unconscious is inarticulate and can only be heard when its other half is silent. Our unconscious holds wisdom, knowledge, secrets, fears, worries, and joy. It communicates in the language it knows through pictures and feelings when we sleep, via dreams or nightmares, of things that worry or scare us, important things or memories that we need to remember or to warn us, and through whispers when we're awake. If our nurse is calm and balanced, then we will have pleasant dreams, and if not, then nightmares or night terrors. Not all dreams are complex. For example, I think that most of us have had the toilet dream, where we're looking for a toilet. That's because we need to go to the toilet, and our unconscious wakes us up so we don't wet the bed. But if, for example, we're on the toilet in the middle of a mall with people staring, laughing, or mocking us, then that gives meaning that we need to discover. Logotherapy helped me to see that our dreams are personal and meaningful, as opposed to other beliefs of dream interpretation, and in my opinion, other types of therapy, where the personal meaning is disregarded and the person is expected to follow, believe, or accept in things that are given general meaning. Dreams can only be interpreted correctly by knowing the dreamer. I see dream interpretation as a therapy session with the client's unconscious message and the client themselves. One of my symptoms from PTSD is self-detachment. I cannot look at my reflection. My body is not mine and feels alien. Frankl's quote, when we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves, makes me wonder if my nurse decided to take over, as the death I experienced after my son passed changed me. The person I was died and was reborn. I'm getting to know this new person. We're stronger, self-confident, and experiences some peace, and I'm happy to say that I like her. My somatic health is at its worst, and there is so much I cannot do. But I remember Jerry, who said, I broke my neck. It did not break me. Logotherapy made me realize that my body is not me. My name is not me. My name is an identifier. My body is a machine, and my name is the name of the machine. My true self, my nurse, is infinite and nameless, and when the time comes, it will leave its house, and I will be reborn to the next stage in my journey. Until that time comes my disconnect from the physical, has enabled me, again with Frankl's teachings, to look inward, away from the wants of the id and the expectations of the superego, from the somatic and psychic suffering, and to focus on what nurtures me, my nurse. I still ask why, even more than before, but I ask from a place of strength with a thirst for knowledge. And instead of a mind filled with negativity, such as the voices of worry, fear, grief, regret, and guilt, I choose to focus on the one voice of positivity that thirsts for knowledge and brings comfort, acceptance, and hope. I've learned that the only person I can expect things from is me. The only competition I'm in is with myself, to be the best that I can be, that I am the one that I have to face and live with, that I be true to my beliefs and morals, to not just hear, but to listen to others and myself, and that every situation, every interaction, experience, and conversation is an opportunity for knowledge, and that a mistake, a negative, can be learned from and turned into a positive. To not compare myself, my life, my path, fate, or suffering to others, as mine is my own, as they bear theirs. Frankl said it best with, a man's suffering is similar to the behavior of a gas. If a certain quantity of gas is pumped into an empty chamber, it will fill the chamber completely and evenly, no matter how big the chamber. Thus, suffering completely fills the human soul and conscious mind, whether the suffering is great or little. Therefore, the size of human suffering is absolutely relative. While self-transcendence has always been an integral part of me, through logotherapy, I've learned that I cannot practice it authentically, to love and accept others as being perfectly imperfect in their humanity, if I'm not prepared to do the same for myself. With some things, I have achieved success. Others are a work in progress. The time I shouted at my mother and made her cry, I know it wasn't my fault. I was tired, in pain, scared, frustrated, refusing to face the fact that this dying stranger was my mother. That if I had paid more attention to my son, not visited the place where he caught COVID, or my failure at clearing his breathing tube that resulted in him suffocating to death. Change can be hard and frightening. When we are born, we leave what we know, what is familiar, safe, and comfortable. The act of birth for the baby is painful, somatically and psychically, frightening, strange, wrong, and the baby doesn't know why it's being ripped away from everything it knows and loves to something strange and awful. To the baby, this is suffering without meaning, while as an adult, we know that this suffering is meaningful and necessary so that we can transition to the next phase in life's journey. The same is for rebirth, which we experience in our lives, from child to teenager and puberty, adulthood, aging, end of life, all traumatic events that affect us so drastically that we are changed. The same, yet different, like the caterpillar that morphs into a butterfly, or my tree. Through the bars of my window, of my sanctuary, is a tree. The year that my son became ill, my mother passed from dementia and cancer. To cope with her decline, I taught myself how to make jams, preserves, English baked goods, and Indian food. My therapeutic diversion became a passion and a successful business I loved and worked so hard for. I had some wonderful customers, and some became friends. It built up my self-esteem and physical strength. I had so many plans for expanding and growing my business, plans that would go unfulfilled. I was devastated and bitter to yet again have something that was so meaningful and that I'd worked so hard for and loved be rendered meaningless by its loss. My tree is a moringa tree that I bought to use in my Indian dishes, and I'd waited with pride for it to grow big enough to use. But one day, a rabbit ate through its slender trunk. It was broken, dead, and useless, like my hopes and dreams, like myself. And with bitterness, I thought, it doesn't matter that it's dead, as its purpose, its meaning had become meaningless. After a while, I saw leaves and felt hope. In the coming weeks and months, I looked forward to seeing its progress. A little taller, there were branches, more leaves, then flowers. I remembered that its use wasn't solely culinary, and it had many other properties for health. I felt that together we were growing and healing, reborn and seemingly the same but different than before. I saw that its trunk was slender and green and felt troubled. That's not a proper trunk. It's not how it should be. It's not like other trees with a strong, rigid trunk. It will break easily. But then one day there was a storm with strong winds, and I was sure it would be destroyed. Only when I looked closer could I see that the trunk was exactly how it should be, as its flexibility enabled it to bend as it suffered the strong wind and rain. Had the trunk been rigid, as I thought it should be, as other trees were, it would have broken. Then I understood that I too need to be flexible, and the things that make me different from others doesn't mean that I am weak or wrong. It makes me unique and strong enough to weather any storm. My tree has lost its flowers, most of its leaves, and looks rather worse for wear. It mirrors my worsened somatic health, but despite this, I know us as strong. I see tiny green leaves of perseverance, determination, and hope that mirror the same feelings within myself. Frankel wrote that everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. I choose to love and accept myself as I do others. I choose to be strong and brave. I choose self-worth. I choose to be kind. I choose to help others. I choose to value each moment. I choose not to be sad. I choose to live and fight until my last breath. This presentation was very difficult for me to write. So why did I choose to bare my soul and share such intimate details of my life? Frankel wrote Man's Search for Meaning for anyone who needed it. It wasn't for academia, but for the regular person. And he said he'd be happy if it helped just one person, not knowing that it would help and touch the heart of millions. He didn't want it to be a Holocaust book, but included his experience in order to show by example that meaning can be found in suffering, and the tenets of logotherapy, that even in one's darkest hour there is choice, hope, and goodness. Due to my belief and trust in Frankel and logotherapy, I feel that it is my responsibility and honor to share my story of suffering, with the hope that it may help or comfort others and show the healing power that is logotherapy. I would like to conclude with some important words from Frankel that give me strength. When a man finds that it is his destiny to suffer, he will have to accept his suffering as his task. He will have to acknowledge the fact that even in suffering, he is unique and alone in the universe. No one can relieve him of his suffering or suffer in his place. His unique opportunity lies in the way in which he bears his burden. The end. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. I think the greatest demonstration that we have from your story, and this is what to me is another look at suffering, is Frankel spoke about the defiant power of the human spirit, but you portray the defiant will to live. And it was a heritage given to you by your father, the defiant will to live. And that will, that flame of wanting to be, and cannot be extinguished. And you know, the suffering that you went through exposed you to almost every feeling that is there possibly that is possible to mention. You were faced with every nuance of questioning the meaning of life, and then always coming up with I can be like a warrior, I can see it through. So thank you so much, Aviva. There's a lot of discussion that we can have now. I want anybody else to just, our time is we can go a bit over time since we started late, so please, some other observations.
I just
You
felt
so
so,
much. Yeah. Please,
yeah, I
Pan.
just felt so touched all the way through. My goodness me. She had me in tears and smiling with joy and, just so many emotions I felt all the way through. And amazing the connection you feel with somebody, even though your suffering was different, and just such a meaningful talk. We'll definitely cut out that little bit that of interference at the beginning. Thank you, Aviva.
It's so wonderful that Pan responded because Pan has had a lifetime of suffering too. And this is what makes Pan and Aviva such heroes for us because, what is there to complain about if it is possible to survive all of that, to have felt the most negative feelings you can think possible, and then to also experience the strength of the will to meaning that will not give up and that eventually broke through into victory. It doesn't matter if the suffering is still ongoing, it has lost its threat and it is now, and like it always was, just a challenge. Just a challenge to show how much faith we have in life, how much faith we have in ourselves, that we refuse, absolutely refuse to give up. And that's what your father said. And that's the moral greatness that was achieved in the Holocaust by people like your father and Frankel. And like one little survivor said to me, and this is what you must learn, sweetie. Never give up. Never give up. That's it. And if you don't, you'll get through to the end where you can look back on your life as something that led you to this momentous realization of the preciousness of life, that you will do anything to preserve. And therefore, it's a mission that's really been shaped in suffering because why? You and Pan have got a skill in terms of sensitivity to other people's suffering in every single way that you can possibly think of. So your empathy has grown by leaps and bounds. And like Pan said, it's an overwhelming sensation that wow, I've got so much to give, so much love, so much, so strong a message to transmit to others who might be tempted to give up in the face of difficult and awful situations. So, wow, wow, yes.
Aviva, Jania, I'd just like to say I congratulate you on sharing your story. It's well written, it's so meaningful. It's like Teria says, some people have so much suffering, like you and Pan, that you can basically help anyone that comes to you because you've got the resources. You assembled them while you went through all of this, even though you say you still struggle from time to time. But honestly, I take my hat off to you for sharing and doing such a fantastic job and using humor as one of your ways to come through difficult times. I think that's very important.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was a particular point that you brought. You are an absolute example of what Frankl called tragic optimism. This paradoxical thing that Frankl said, that if you take pain and suffering and guilt and death out of the picture, and we are, what is it, what makes us so afraid is that makes us afraid that we're going to lose life. But it provokes us to embrace life and to affirm it. So, Wow, that kind of heights of self-distancing, and wow, that you can laugh, and it's a laughter of victory, of not a laughter of not being a victim, and that you can even look at your own failures and distresses in a humorous way. Well, and say, well, that was me, and I can laugh at it now. But oh boy, I'm so glad I am me where I am right now. Great, wonderful.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Aviva, I feel like I don't really know what to say, but I just feel like I have to congratulate you because I feel so awed and in honor of, again, this is the second time I'm hearing it, and it hasn't really changed much, but it's just all that power that's in you, that's the greatness that was just waiting to come through, was there all along, and then it just came through you, and it's very solid. I feel something very solid and very, very beautiful to share with the world, that you have to share with the world. That's all I can say.
And Batya, what strikes me so much is when I saw Aviva in the video, and I see her tonight. Gosh, it's like suffering tests us to say that I am beautiful. And boy, are you looking beautiful tonight, Aviva?
Thank you. Just a short example of what I call my tragic humor. I mentioned that the anemia ruined my teeth. I was given a plate, but it's uncomfortable. So I got angry with it, and knowing I spent the week looking for, I joke, my teeth. And I started getting really upset because today was a big moment for me and I want my teeth. And I got upset, and then I said, can you not see how ridiculous this is? You're hunting round for your teeth, which you probably threw somewhere in frustration and hatred for them. And I laughed, and that was all right. And it was all right. And it was like, this is my Oscar moment, and I look like a demented rabbit. Yeah. And I put makeup on, which I don't usually do. But thanks to you, thanks to all of you, your messages and your comments. You're all so kind. And thank you all for making me feel so comfortable that I can share what are very difficult and deeply personal things.
Yeah. I want to just give a last thanks to Batya. What an evidence Aviva is of your ability to empathize, of your ability to transmit the truths of logotherapy that could hit home to your students in such a way. I want to give honor where honor is due. So thank you. Thank you for giving us Aviva.
Thank you, Teria.
Okay, everybody. I think we can end this evening on this wonderful note of feeling, listen, if Aviva could do it, so can I. Okay? Oh, so good night, everybody.
Thank you and good night.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good
Night.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Good night. Thank you.
Night.